You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program, a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew. Welcome to a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. Today, we've got a host of authors on to answer one of the most frequent questions that's asked of any author. We're asking them, have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym? And today to answer, we have on Kit Sora, the visionary artist behind Kit Sora, the autobiography. Brad Dunn, author of After Dark Vapors. Bridget Canning, author of The Greatest Hits of Wanda James, award-winning children's author Sheila Lukens, Mary Walsh, Ellen Curtis, Paul Carberry, Aaron Vance, Tanith Frost, Ali House, Rebecca North, BC Labeled, Tasha Madison, Tracy Walton, first artist and photographer Kit Sora, the visionary artist behind Kit Sora, the autobiography. Kit, have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
Not me. Not at all. Actually, when I moved out to Cornerbrook when I was but a wee lass, I moved out for Grenfell, and I didn't want to be who I was in town, so I'm like, I'm going to change my name, and I'm going to be Twyla Hale, because Twilight was a big thing, and Jasper Hale is my favorite person, and I'm so sorry that you needed to know that, but you totally needed to know that. So I was going to be Twyla Hale in Grenfell, and it was going to be great, and nobody was going to know who I was, and I was just going to be incredible, and...
Well, you're that.
Totally didn't stick. Didn't stick. Kit was sort of what came through, and here I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Paul Carberry, author of the Zombies on the Rock series from Engine Books. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
No, I have not. I don't see the point. I did this. I'm proud of it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Aaron Vance, editor-in-chief of Engine Books and the editor of the From the Rock anthology series. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
I have.
Oh, can I ask why?
Part of it is because the editing thing is Aaron Vance. And sometimes there's a part of me that wants the writing, if I actually ever publish this novel that I've been writing for 3 years, I almost want it to be separate from Aaron Vance, the editor.
What if it was Aaron Vance, but Aaron?
No.
What if it was Vance Aaron?
The only problem with that is that I like being a girl.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just, sometimes I do think of that, or if I ever want to write something that I don't want it to have, the Aaron Vance brand, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because somehow I have made a name for myself, and I didn't really mean to do that.
You have. You were at a convention. I was there with you a while back, many years back, and someone was like, are you the Aaron Vance?
How did that happen? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fun. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Mary Walsh, author of Crying for the Moon. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
No, I haven't. There doesn't seem to be any point to it, and I'm old. Maybe if I was younger, I would have thought about writing under a name like George Eliot, changing your name to a male name, and just to see if it had, any effect. But even by the time I came along, there were lots of women being published, not as many. Of course, the interesting thing when we were talking about reviews, it's only a tenth of the number of reviews in national publications. I guess these are American, are reviews of women's work.
Yeah.
Women's work doesn't get reviewed, apparently. Only male work gets reviewed because male work is important. But, so things haven't changed as much as you'd like to think they've changed since George Eliot. But at the same time, I've never been tempted to take up a pseudonym. That's interesting. And it's interesting that you thought about the question in that way, and that's not incorrect. I just kind of let the question hang out there. But I've always wondered, and you're the first person who's made a splash on the scene, let's say, the first person who's reached a certain level that I've had on the show. But the way other authors have taken it is, if they got famous already, would they write under a pseudonym and then submit to a publisher under the pseudonym to see if they could still, if the publisher would still take the book? You know what I mean? But here's the thing with me. Realistically, the publisher wouldn't have looked at my book at all if I didn't have 40 years. I mean, the reason, my agent, the reason that HarperCollins first took it, now, HarperCollins insists that they thought the writing was great and the voice was great and stuff like that.
And they probably
did. The reason I got the meeting was because, I'd done 40 years on television, Yeah. So I didn't see any, I'm not, it was my first novel. It's the thing I wanted to do all my life. I wanted to get it published and get it done and use anything that I had that would be in my favor. I guess if you're an established novelist and you're going, like Ian Rankin, I think, writes under a pseudonym for another kind of book that he writes. Maybe.
J.K. Rowling does it now. J.K. Rowling has a thriller series.
Yes. And you can understand that. But I'm not in a position, that kind of position at all.
And you know what? I kind of agree with you. And whatever you needed to do to get this book out there, I think was the right thing to do, because I absolutely adored it.
Oh, great. Thank you, Matthew.
No, thank you. Really. This goes on my top 10 of the last 10 years books. And that's not, I'm not trying to pat my own back here, but I read about 500 novels a year. That's another reason they picked me to do this, because they knew I could read all the novels in a fairly short order. When I say this is the top 10, one of my top 10 novels in the last 10 years, we're talking about 5,000 books.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm even more impressed now. This is amazing. Well, I'm not going to be able to get out to the door because my head will be so swollen. But
Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Tanith Frost, best-selling author of the Immortal Solace series. Tanith, have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
I am a pseudonym.
Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have B.C. Labeled, the author of Juris Lunans, Upon a Wake of Flame, To Drown in Sand, and To Drown in Ash. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
No, I get in enough trouble on my own.
That's fair. It's valid.
The thing is, too, I have a long-term sort of vision, and it may be naive, and it probably won't come to fruition, but the idea of building a brand, and I don't mean that in a Hasbro way, but just building something that's self-replicating, so that if you're, God forbid, but if I'm 13 novels in and the pace picks up on the first one, I'm okay with that being attached to that brand and my name.
Yeah.
Whereas, pseudonyms, I'd have to cross that bridge when I come to it, but because of the eclecticism of the times, you can literally hit all the markets at once and have your name all over it. And I'm not sure that the genre lock is the same as it was in the 80s. No one would read a R.A. Salvatore sci-fi book, but I don't think that's the case now.
No, it's not.
So I've actually got, the very initial sketching framings for a bodybuilding book. I've got fantasy coming in droves. I've got some science fiction stuff, and there's some Stephen King-y pseudo-autobiographical stuff that I've been toying with too, which my kids are insisting I write. And then there's horror. So all of those genres are there for you. And I think because of the way online sales work, if you are interested in horror and you get a horror title and you like it, yes, you're going to get a prompt, more titles from that author, which is awesome. But generally, if you read it for horror, you're going to want more horror. And if you like that writer, you're going to want more of that writer's horror. So, I'm more than happy to put my brand on everything that comes out and just see how it goes.
Absolutely. I'm also a fan of, I understand the logic behind, I know authors who write romance, but every so often write horror, and every time, you can follow an author on Amazon, and be alerted when they put out a new book and stuff like that. What their experience is, if they put out 10 romance books, and then they switch it up with one horror book, they lose followers. And so, because the people who read the romance don't want the horror, so that's tends to be I think why they do pseudonyms. But sure. I just hate it, because I'm good fiction's good fiction. If Stephen King suddenly came out with a romance, I would be listen, I don't typically read romance, but I will try it because it's Stephen King, and I might learn a new genre,
So there's two sides of that argument. One is just straight up marketing and human behavior, which makes sense. If people read romance novels and they think they've been betrayed by someone switching to horror, and they've decided in their head, oh, look, that person's switching to horror, that's not my thing, I'm done with them. People are going to do that. So that makes total sense. And if I had a long series of romance novels, and I wanted to switch to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I might consider a pseudonym. Maybe that makes sense at the time. Maybe I don't care. Maybe if they unfollow me because I dared write something scary, then
I'm on that train. I'm on the I do not care
issue,
train.
Right? The other thing is, though, one of Stephen King's best pieces ever, in my humble opinion, is a short story called The Last Rung on the Ladder, which is not horror.
No, it's not.
So if he wrote a piece that was like To Kill a Mockingbird, and he's come close several times, I'd be all over that. And I wouldn't back away just because it's not going to be Christine or Pet Sematary. So I tend to side with you on that. If I get a writer that I really enjoy, and he brings forth, a couple of different genres, I'm going to explore all of it because I like his or her voice. I like the way they frame things, and I'm going to follow it. And if it doesn't work, that's okay too. The terror of the unfollow that afflicts marketing now, I think eventually will. I might be, playing the old man card here, but I think eventually it will collapse. I think eventually people don't care. What's happening is that I see anyway is microeconomy. So people are following very tiny individual brands to their end. And yes, when you're on a massive algorithm like Facebook or Amazon, 10 unfollows, it's like the stock market. Oh God, I'm losing shares. I got to sell, like panic. But I don't think it's going to go that way for long. And if you're generating good tailgate sales, that means you have people reading your hard copies.
Yep.
When you do that, those fans, and I'm one of them, is probably going to pick up a hard copy of something else that you tried.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ali House, author of the Segment Delta Archives series, as well as a frequent contributor to the From the Rock collection of anthologies. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
Yes, I have. I mean, there was a point where when I started off writing early on, I was writing kind of like, I guess, guy-based stories or like guy-focused stories about like assassins and murderers and things.
You were writing from a male point of view or a male-centric point of view or something?
Usually from a male-centric point of view because I guess back in that time there still weren't that many literary females in kind of an action genre.
Sure.
So I mostly wrote from male perspectives, and I thought, well, maybe if I have like a neutral sounding name, or I pull an S.E. Hinton or a J.K. Rowling, it might help out my work because nobody will be like, oh, what's this girl doing writing about assassins?
I hate that exists.
Yeah, I don't think it exists as much now, or at least I'd like to think it doesn't.
I think it was J.K. Rowling that actually kind of broke that ceiling, only because her books were so popular, like the most popular thing, we're still in the wake of it kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
That, as a result, the story of her having to change her name to the first two initials for that reason became so popular as a result as well, and people became aware of that issue.
Mm-hmm. I also, at one point, was like, man, I should write some Harlequin romance novels and see if I can make some money. Now, those would definitely be under a pseudonym.
Are you telling me those are under a pseudonym?
No.
What would the pseudonym be?
I'll leave it to you to find out. It's a mystery.
I see. H. Ouse? No.
No, something much cooler.
Oh, okay.
Also, Harlequin romance writers have to have, like, romantic names.
Your first name could be Cottage. Cottage House.
Cottage House? Oh, that's quaint.
Yeah. Aw. Little House on the Prairie by Cottage House. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Bridget Canning, author of The Greatest Hits of Wanda Janes, and editor of What's Written in the Ladies. Do you ever consider writing a novel under a pseudonym?
No, I haven't. I was a little worried with this book that it would be kind of, tagged as chick lit, and it wasn't going to be seen as, like literature, like women's writing does tend to get stuck in a certain category and assumptions get made from it. So I think a couple of times I did think about, like, maybe I should just use my initials and stuff, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to be seen as I'd rather fight that than put on a fake name. So because I'm afraid of some kind of bigotry or sexism. So
Yeah. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Brad Dunn, author of After Dark Vapors. Do you ever consider writing under a pseudonym?
I'm gonna no, because I don't really have a reason to at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting when, like, back to Stephen King, but, like, also J.K. Rowling, like, super successful writers who want to see if they can, like, get something to sell without their name.
Yeah,
you know
see
what I
if
mean?
people like it just based on the book.
You know,
not
yeah,
the
get
name
back to
behind.
that, like, blank slate of, like, just pure, like, readership, you know?
I wonder if any of them do that and actually send in... Because, I mean, at some point, like, King and Rowling, anything they hand into the publisher, that like they don't have to go through someone, they don't have to submit to a slush pile or anything like that. Sometimes I wonder if they ever, like, in addition to creating a pseudonym, create a pseudonym and submit to the regular channels just to see if it'll go anywhere.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, because I know J.K. Rowling, I haven't read those books, but she has, like, the mystery series now.
I haven't touched those either.
I think her name is, like, Robert Galbraith or something. That's the pseudonym she uses.
Okay.
So I'm curious. I wonder what the publication process was if she did that. You know,
that'd be impressive if she went back from the beginning and did like secretly like sent it.
It's like if you're, you know, you query it and they get back to you and then they're like, oh, by the way, I'm J.K. Rowling. Like, then they're like, what? But obviously, like, so there's a handful of writers now that they could just publish their grocery list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if they went to their publisher and was like, I want to publish, like, just nonsense that I wrote in the middle of the night.
I've read a few books like that.
I'm sure they'd be like, sure. Yeah, let's do it. Let's turn it into a movie, you know?
Yeah.
So you gotta, like, hold yourself back at that point. I feel like that will be something that I would be interested in if I was ever that big, you know?
To see if you're...
You know, to see if I could do it under another name. Otherwise, like, I feel like, I don't know, like, I don't think I'd ever write, like erotica or something, you know, like, to pay the bills, sort of thing. But I feel like if I...
I don't think I'd be good at it.
No.
like...
I've been tempted because I know that there is a lot of, like, you know, you can Google, like, the formulae that these writers use. And because the readership, it's almost like back in, like, Shakespeare's day when it was like, this is the type of play that the audience wants to see.
Yeah.
So you write this thing, and it's like same thing with this readership. It's like there's so many of these subgenres, like time traveling romance and whatever romance, that it's like, here's the formula. It's almost like paint by numbers.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them make good money doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and like I've heard, I don't know, like, I have a buddy of mine who works at a tour.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's like famous writers that use pseudonyms to supplement you know, their income.
Absolutely.
And so I'd be curious to know who does that.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if they're like not just famous but also significant. Let's say gonna continue to be significant in like significant part of the culture. I almost hope someone's keeping track of that behind the scenes, because in 100 years, like, if X author, like if Alice Walker also wrote Harlequins, I want to read those Harlequins. Like, I want those as part of the catalog when I study Alice Walker now.
I'd love it if like Margaret Atwood was writing.
That would be amazing.
Like some crazy romance novels.
Yes.
But I can't imagine like writing the projects you want to write, but then also writing stuff that pays the bills.
Yeah.
I feel like that will be, it'll almost like poison the well, you know, like how do you separate church and state there? And I feel like you just burn out on writing, you know?
There's also, I mean, at what point do you start putting, I wouldn't know how to separate ideas. Like when I have an idea for a story, how would I internally go, okay, this one's for me, and this idea that I had is actually trash. This one goes in the just pays the bill category. Like, I wouldn't be able to judge. I can judge my novels after the fact, but, you know.
I think like Faulkner used to do that too. Like, he wrote screenplays. He went to Hollywood and wrote screenplays for a while.
Really?
And like he hated it. Like, it was like all garbage.
Yeah. Wait, so Faulkner thought the screenplays he wrote were garbage?
Yeah.
Clearly he didn't read his own books, because
I like
my
Faulkner.
God. Oh
and
my
I think
God.
Fitzgerald did the same thing too. Like,
well, Fitzgerald was dating someone in Hollywood.
Yeah, and
allegedly.
He lived a very wasteful lifestyle.
Yeah.
So he had to supplement his income. But, you know, I would much rather just like work a full-time job to supplement my income and then write what I actually want to write on the side.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tasha Madison, the author of Fabric of a Generation. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
I probably played with it a little bit earlier in my career because I had some friends that have used pseudonyms. But for me, the kind of writing that I do, I don't feel like it's really necessary. I guess if I was writing something, you know, that was maybe people felt like was taboo, or, you know, because I know some of my friends and family members, you know, have, like, my writing friends are like, well, if my friends knew I wrote romance, they would make fun of me, you know, things like that.
Yes.
But I'm really proud of about my writing. It's something that I don't take for granted because it's not always easy. You know, sometimes, you know, the muse inspires you and I can write nonstop. But when the well runs dry, I think it really helps you to appreciate those times where the fountain is, you know, really running fast. So for me, it's something I'm always proud about, and it's not something that someone can put me down about. Even if they don't like my writing, I know that I'm a good writer. So I have confidence in knowing, and I think a lot of that comes from having the training early on and being critiqued by people early on, and not having people just say, "Oh, that's wonderful," when it's not. You know, having people really push me to write better, to be really more thoughtful about the words I put on the page. And I think after years of doing that day in and day out, it really helps you to develop the discipline to know who you are and where your talents lie. So for me, I don't think I would ever do that just because I'm proud about what I write, even if no one else is.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, like, I haven't read your stuff yet, but I can tell you're a good writer just because of how you talked in our solo interview a while ago. Just because you can always tell when a writer hasn't thought about their own stuff enough yet, because when you ask them a question, they just freeze. Like, they can't answer it. Whereas, like, if you're a good writer, you've thought about all the angles, and why is a character doing this, and what's their motivation, and why are they going here? Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have award-winning children's author Sheila Lukens. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
Yes, because the two names that I'm using are not really pseudonyms. They're it's not the right word, is it? Synonyms. Pseudonyms. I can't say it. Anyway, you know what I mean. Those are like my maiden name and my married name. I was Sheila Roberts, and then I married someone called Lukens. Then I became Sheila Lukens. So they're not really pseudonyms. I have considered writing under another name, but I haven't done it yet.
Interesting. But you did choose to write some books under one name and some books under another.
Yes, because I wrote the first one before I got married.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then the second one, I decided just to keep the name. And then the third one, I thought, well, I should change it because it's a different genre altogether. So I changed it for the children's books.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tracy Walton, who is from Trepassey, Newfoundland. She recently just put out a book through Breakwater Books called Send More Tourists, The Last Ones Were Delicious. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
Yes, definitely. I still consider it, actually. I feel like I have some things I want to say that I'm not sure they're palatable for the public. And maybe I don't want to take the hit for speaking about them. Maybe more feminist work or social activism.
Cool.
Work stuff that I'm kind of hesitant to be publicly responsible for. And then also sometimes I play with like the idea of writing horror or sci-fi, things like that. I mean, maybe you've seen little elements of that in my stuff.
I did. I think that's why it was sent to me so excitedly. They were like, look, Matthew, you're the genre guy. We have something for you, finally.
Yeah. I kind of like playing around those areas. You know, I grew up reading like Clive Barker and Stephen King and people like that. And I didn't get super into sci-fi, but Harlan Ellison is who I guess has been pigeonholed as sci-fi, but he's like the highest form of literature as far as I'm concerned. He's just brilliant. You know, I grew up with stuff like that, and I take a lot of inspiration from stuff like that. So sometimes I think about just like to write some scary stories or some really experimental stuff, and maybe I would use a pseudonym in those cases just to break from the other persona or the other kind of voice, because I think they're happening on different planes. So it would be more interesting to go at it from somewhere else. And then also, being a woman in literature, I sometimes think that maybe I should publish under a boy's name.
I hate that that's a
if it would
thing.
make a difference.
It's so sad, but I hate that
I
that's
hate that
a thing.
it's a thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, a lot of the stories in the collection are not written from anybody's perspective, like a gender.
Yeah.
But everybody assumes when you're reading it, and maybe I would naturally do the same thing, assumes they're written from a female perspective because, you know, I'm Tracy, right? So they see my picture, they see my name, and they go, oh, it's written from a female perspective. But I actually write a lot without telling who the gender is or what the age of the person is or what their class is, and I kind of try to keep it very ambiguous.
Yeah, you
know,
do a
sort of
really
like
good
an
job of
Eddie
that,
character.
actually. I found when I was
Thank
reading
you.
it, I had a different, like, voice in my head every story.
That's good.
Like in one story I had what I thought was your voice, you know what I mean? And another story it was a male voice, and another story it was a completely different female voice. It was a different one every time. But what's weird, I find, is that your brain casts that voice in the first paragraph.
Right.
And it's just there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I want the reader to develop their own... I want the reader to place that there. I guess I'm trying to back off when I do those things, like, or when I, you know, try to make my characters ambiguous. It's sort of backing off to let the reader... I feel like it makes it more imaginative for the reader because they have to fill in that blank as well.
Yeah.
Not just, oh, you walked into a house and the reader has to imagine what the house looks like and what walking in there looks like, but also who's walking in. And I don't know, maybe I'm hoping that the reader feels more involved in the story, and like it's kind of like writing in second person is fun for me too for the same reason, because it's like drawing the reader in and letting they become a character. So I kind of feel that contract is there all the time where the reader is a character because, you know, like you said, the author is dead. Once I'm finished the story, it's not mine anymore.
Yeah.
And people ask me, what was this about? Or what did this ending mean? And my answer is that annoying thing of, what do you think it means? Because that's how I would like it to be.
Yeah.
It's not up to me anymore.
Well, you ended it where you did for a reason, because you didn't want it to be.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ellen Curtis, who serves on the Wannell board and is the author of the Infinity series from Engine Books, as well as the editor of the From the Rock anthology. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
Yes, I have considered it. Not for anything I'm working on now, but I have a couple projects floating around in mind that perhaps I'd like to have a little bit of different branding on.
Okay.
So for purposes of branding, yes, I've considered writing under a pseudonym.
Cool. I'd say that I can't wait to see what those are, but maybe I won't know what they are, because maybe they'll be under a pseudonym.
Perhaps not. I mean, I've had some strategic ideas about pseudonyms, but it's one of those things that you want to keep close to the chest.
Yeah, because the second you say it out loud.
Exactly. Then people know, and
Yeah.
then what's the point? So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Rebecca North, author of Elliot and the Impossible Fish from Breakwater Books. Did you ever consider writing under a pseudonym?
I guess not in fact, because I've come up with some, like, man, it would be cool to be like, I don't think Dr. Seuss is like a fake name, but, you know, something like that, something really catchy, or
I think it is.
something that,
Can't
like,
remember.
something that would really stick with kids, like,
But you've got a
Professor
cool name.
Doodles or something. But
Rebecca North is a cool name.
Thanks. I like my name too.
Yeah.
I like, so I didn't think about it until after like having something fun like Professor Zoodles or something that kids would love. I don't know. Rebecca North is cool. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I like author names that lend themselves to puns. Like, if they ever do a hardcover collection of all your children's books, you know, those big ones that contain all the stories, they could call it, like, Due North or something like that.
Oh, wow, that's cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah, you could have fun.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.